Greetings, greetings, greetings. It is I, your king, King Clifford Jefferson, ascendant of Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jew, son of Folkwell of Jerusalem, the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know as Jesus Christ. I'm here with another important lesson again, pretty much revisitation of what was already said in my previous lectures. So I'm going to be short into introduction and get on right with the lesson. It is September 18th, 2023. We're now going into the transitional phase of our understanding of who we were, who we are, and where we're going, who we're going to be, who we are going to be. This is a beautiful lesson. I tailored it based off all the previous lectures that I did prior to this one. And for all those who have viewed those lectures, you would have no problem catching on. All right, so I give honor to my queen, sister Galveston from the House of Galveston, as well as my Archbishop Bell from the House of Belmont. I give all those who are members of the English Third Temple Church of England, as well as all those who have ascended to that plane of plane made manifested on the what we call zero density. And we know that we're about to travel on to what we call fourth density. All right, because as we came, should we return? All right, so once again, this is going to be a beautiful lecture. Please pay very close attention. Let's get started. No, let me just share. Here we go. All right. Everyone remembers to keep the L's. All right. I'm pretty sure everyone remember from the commercials they make in regards to making cookies. All right. And we know that these cookies are made within the tree. And this tree is symbolic of the tree of life, i.e. the origin where all life comes from. So we know that a lot of things that are given to us and we view through our visual spectrum is pretty much filled with metaphor, vagueness, non-clarity, what we call deception, lacking a proper perception of what it is that you're actually viewing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I really want to show this small clip about the commercial, because it says a lot about who we are as being created by our creator versus who they say we are and being created by a creator who they say created us. All right, so please pay very close attention to the symmetry. All right.
Hi, Ernie. Hi, Ernie. Hey, you're a cookie.
That popular Keebler cookie named E.L. Fudge. That's E as in everybody, L as in loves, fudge.
Pleased to meet you.
Rich, buttery, shortbread cookies shaped like an elf and dipped in smooth, creamy fudge. Everybody's gonna love E.L. Fudge.
I never met an elf cookie I didn't like.
That's E as in everybody, L as in loves, fudge. E.L. Fudge cookies from Keebler. You'll love them.
Okay. We know that commercial when we see it, based off how we view it through our sight, You know, people who blind, they can't actually view the commercial. So as we view it through sight based off the image that we perceive, we upload that to our mental, and we perceive the image or the symmetry or symbolism that they want us to perceive. All right. So this is done by what we call signals or waves that the brain receives, and the brain has to make sense of what it is that it's receiving from the images that you view and what we call light. All right. Now, it's very important, hence the word elf, because these are elves making cookies. And the cookie got two sides. All right. One side is dark, i.e. matter, and the other side represents white, i.e. density, less dense, i.e. which means antimatter. And the cookie also shows what we call two-dimensional. It's a two-dimensional figure. All right, from zero-dimensional, one-dimensional to two-dimensional. All right, so just look at the understanding of, as we said, when you view anything on TV, all right, when you view anything on TV, it's based off learning or an experience. You should be enjoying anything that you're viewing or doing based off what you're viewing, based off what you're touching, based off what you're feeling. It's not for your enjoyment, it's for learning purposes. And a lot of learning that we receive as beings on this planet is for naught, because there's no justification to verify the learning, and the learning that's going to manifest to something better than what you're subject to now, i.e. three-dimensional state of being. When I speak about three-dimensional beings, I'm talking about us as perceived under the term humans. All right. So going back to what we said, viewing images and the signals that they give off, these are called waves. All right. We know waves are based off energy. We know energy can never be destroyed, and it just change form. It has the ability to be transferred, all right, through mental transfer. And to understand mental transfer, you must understand electricity, electromagnetism, all right? So you just seen the abstract of how our children view it. And when we view it as children and imprint within our coding, the symmetry or the symbolism that they want in lieu of our understanding what it is that we perceive through, like we said, light. We know light is a result of energy transferring. All right, energy, light is a result of energy being transferred from some source, and that source is yet to be recognized. All right, so let's first hence the reference to regards to the imagery that we receive as what we call signals and waves, which means something, and those who study electricity or energy in regards to the signal and wave that they give off. All right, and this is called what we call ELF. All right, let's go to it. Extremely low frequency. Extremely low frequency, also called ELFL, is the ITU designation for the electromagnetic radiation radio waves with frequencies from 3 to 30 hertz and corresponding wavelengths of 100,000 to 10,000 kilometers respectively. All right, so we know what electromagnetic radiation is, right? That's called energy, that's light. All right, that's light, which we'll discuss in a second. ELF. ELF radio waves are generated by lightning and natural disturbances in Earth's magnetic field. So they are subject of research by atmospheric scientists. Because of the difficulty of building antennas that can radiate such long waves, ELF frequencies have been used in only a very few human-made communication systems. All right. ELF waves can penetrate seawaters, which make them useful in communication in submarines and in few nations have built military elf transmitters to transmit signals to the submerged submarine, consisting of huge ground wire antennas, i.e. ground depots, long driven by transmitters producing megawatt power. Give me 1 second. Propagation. Due to the extremely large wavelengths of ELF waves, ELF waves can diffract around large obstacles, are not blocked by mountain ranges or the horizon, and can travel around the curvature of the Earth. I repeat, can travel around the curvature of the Earth. Curvature has to do with what we call gravity, what they call general, what's called general relativity theory. You got special relativity theory, and you got general relativity theory. Special relativity theory deals with energy matter equivalency, and what we call regular general what's called general relative theory deals with gravity. All right, it's with curvature. All right, which we'll discuss in a second. ELF BLF wave propagate long distance by Earth's ionosphere waveguide mechanism. The Earth is surrounded by a layer of charged particles, ions, and electrons in the atmosphere at the altitude of about 60 kilometers at the bottom of the ionosphere, called the D layer, which reflects ELF waves. The space between the conductive Earth surfaces and the conductive D layers act as a parallel plate waveguide, which confines ELF waves, allowing them to propagate long distance without escaping into space. All right, so we got an idea of what we call electromagnetic waves, and electromagnetic waves do what we call ELF waves. All right, and we know ELF waves come from what we call light. All right, ELF waves come from light. Let's go back and revisit a little bit of what we talked about in the prior lessons to qualify what we're talking about in regards to the electromagnetic wave that we receive, which is based off the information that's come from the source. And everyone's trying to find out what the source is, And the source is ether. The source is ether, all right? And the origin of the source and the teaching about ether comes from the Middle Ages. All right, the study of ether relative to our understanding came through the time of what we call the Middle Ages. All right, which I'll qualify in a second. All right, so it's very important to understand who you're learning from and where the information that because everything needs to be qualified. All right, everything needs to be qualified. So everything I'm teaching you in regards to our birthright or our inheritance comes from not just our physical makeup, which we define as matter, but it also goes back down to what we call our cellular lineage, our DNA. All right, our cellular lineage, our DNA, and the understanding about our cellular lineage as well as our physical lineage, because we came from one zero stated dimension to what we call three-dimensional, and all that understanding is important. All right, for you to move on to the higher states of existence. All right, i.e., return home to the etheric state, because as it was in the beginning, she'll be in the end. But it's only going to be for the noble family. It's only going to be for the noble family, because the origin of the teachings of what we're learning has assumed to apply to everybody. But if that's the case, then everybody should have their teachings in regards to this for the salvation of the people, subject to those teachings. But everybody rely on the history of the Middle Ages. Everyone relies on the teachings from the Middle Ages, and that's dealing with from the abstract to the concrete. Once again, from the abstract to the concrete. So those who are claiming to have some birthright from what we call time immemorial, going back to what we call immortality, you better have some proof. You better have some proof, because immortality is about remembering your immortality. Immortality is about remembering your immortality, not wondering or thinking about it, you know what I'm saying, based off you hoping or some future transition that somebody told you about, and you ain't did nothing because they telling you it's a promise and you ain't got to do nothing to receive it. That's a problem with that. All right, I'm going to show you. Aether, also spelled Aether, or ethylene. All right, was an Old English term used in Anglo-Saxon England to designate princes of royal dynasties who were eligible for the kingship. You can take that in the abstract or in the concrete. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna take it to the, I'm gonna verify the abstract and the concrete. The term is a Old English and Old Saxon compound of Ashley, all right, or Athiel, or meaning noble family, ing, which means belonging to. That takes you back into what we call cellular lineage, because we know the cellular lineage goes back to what we call the zygote and the gametate. The zygote and the gametate, that deals with the cells. All right, that goes back to the cells we talked about in the last lesson. For those who didn't, please go back and watch that lecture. Okay, let's just see it for a second. These are all concrete terms I'm using. Cellular lineage denotes the developmental history of a tissue or organ from the fertilized embryo. The tissue or organ from the fertilized embryo. So that means that we move from three-dimensional to one-dimensional to two-dimensional on into three-dimensional. This is a base on the tracking of an organism's cellular ancestry through the cell division and relocation of time progresses, i.e. space and time. This starts with the originator cell and finishing with the mature cell that can no longer divide, okay? It can no longer divide, as it's stated, all right? So going back to that noble family, all right, we not only looking at it from us as we view it, as we see through our focal point, which majority of the time is the eyes of what we see, all right, and we build or upload images based on what we see, and what we see or what was created based on what we see by who created that image of what we see, all right, and we have to make sense of that. So we have to go back into our history dealing with our ancestry, which what we call ethnicity and genealogy, but you have to go back further than that. It had to go back to your cellular lineage, all right? And your cellular lineage, i.e. your cell structure, receives instructions as well, which is manifested through what we call light, and light is energy, because we know law of action means the law of motion, i.e. that brings back to what we call special theory of relativity. E equals mc squared. Energy equals matter constant to the speed of light, which is energy equivalence, energy and matter equivalence. We'll talk about that in a second. All right. So we see here cellular has a lineage. During the early years of the Anglo-Saxon rule England, the word Aether was probably used to denote any person of noble birth. When I say noble births, I'm talking about noble birth always going down to your cellular structure, your cellular DNA. You know what I'm saying? Because all our offspring are considered part or composed of what we call our DNA. All right, they're composed of our DNA, and that has to be tracked from the cellular lineage on to what we call the lineage dealing with the record of us, where our cells can no longer divide. As it's stated, our cells can no longer divide. So the only thing that can pass on that information is by passing on that information through our cellular structure, and that's through what we call tying the knots. All right, keeping the offspring alive. But that offspring still must function off the information that it received as from the original originator who gave it the ability to be a life form, to represent the origin of where they came from, i.e. that noble family. All right. We know King Alfred means wise elf. So us as Anglo-Saxon Berbers, we're descendants of these people. So we must move off the frequency, i.e. or the waves, or i.e. the signals that were laid down in the past. And you only can receive that by viewing that information through observation, through what we see, what we call light. All right, because if you're not viewing information, then if you're not in the light, you're in the darkness, meaning you don't know. So if you know, that means that you must be viewing this light, because in the light we contains frequencies, signals, right? Frequencies, the signals that raise you in frequency by those signals to what we call an ascension. All right, where you no longer consider yourself under the state or status that you now assuming as a mortal being, but you're moving to the thought process of immortality, not based off what you wanted to be, but based how the transition really occurred. And that goes based off your cellular structure. Because from that you originated, and from that you'll go back, not from the state as it formalized on this planet thing may manifest it, but as we move on to the the fourth dimensional. And the fourth dimensional deals with what we call space and time. Space and time. We are actually existing in what we call space and time. And space and time is determined by distance. Space and time is determined by distance, and space and time, which is determined by distance, is subject to gravity. All right? It's subject to gravity because we're on this planet. Everything that goes up, it must come down. All right? We think of that on this terrestrial sphere. But this is an egg within what they call a vast universe. We know the universe is composed of what we call matter as well. All right, but something must be there to contain that matter. Something must be there to contain that matter. All right, we're going to discuss all these terms to make it concrete versus the abstract understanding which we give to us by those who didn't know about what existed before matter. All right, what was in that space before there was nothing to put something in that space? All right. Let's continue. Mind uploading. Mind uploading is a speculative process of whole brain emulation in which a brain scan is used to completely emulate the mental state of an individual in a digital computer. The computer would then run a simulation of the brain's information, processing such that it would respond in essentially the same way as the original brain that experienced having a sentient conscious mind. So our brain right now is actually connected to what we call a computer, which is what we call the mind Our brain is the manifestation of the mind, right? Because in the brain we receive information which we call light, right? Because we know our whole being is based on what we call matter, and matter we call skin. We know skin is made of what we call melanite, and melanite is called melanin. Melanin is able to it can't absorb light, but it can receive information from that light. It can receive information from that light, which is we will discuss in a second. All right. So we know that mind uploading is a speculative process of whole brain emulation, in which a brain scan is used to completely emulate the mental state of the individual in a digital computer. So by remembering who you are based off the information that was shared prior to you getting here, you're now starting what they call a mental uploading. You're uploading information about who you were. You got to pick something to upload, whether it's for entertainment, whether it's for research, whatever it is, in order for you to emulate or to facilitate whatever it is that you're trying to bring forth into what they call creation, you know what I'm saying, i.e. man playing God, it first must have a mental upload from some source of information that you're getting it from. All right, substantially mainstream research in related areas are being conducted in neuroscience and computer science, including animal brains mapping and simulation, development of fast supercomputers, virtual reality, brain computers, interfaces, connections, and information extraction from dynamically functioning brains. So we see majority of our time, we find ourselves in front of a computer, right? The world is a computer. Everything you see on the computer, you can find in the world. And everything that you see in the world, you look up in the computer. For what? Mental uploading. All right? As a result of entertainment, expression, what it is that you uploaded. As a result of you being here. It ain't because you want to go back somewhere or bring back something that used to be here. You only think about future stuff, and future stuff is subject to a limitation because it ain't here yet. Anything can happen. All right? Mental image. You better worry about what you think about. It's very important. What do they say? What a man thinketh, so shall it be. In the philosophy of mind, neuroscience, and cognitive science, a mental image is an experience that on most occasions significantly resembles the experience of perceiving some object, event, or scene, but occurs when the relative object, event, or scene is not actually present to the senses. All right? That's the past or the future. That's the past or the future. There are sometimes episodes, particularly on falling asleep, hypnagogic imagery, and waking up, excuse me, you know how it is, I speak too fast. Hypnonymic imagery, when the mental imagery may be dynamic, phantasmagoric, and involuntary in character, repeatedly presenting identifiable objects or actions spilling over from waking events or defined perceptions presenting at kaleidoscopic fields in which no distinct object can be discerned. Mental imagery can sometimes produce the same effect as will be produced by the behavior or experience of imagining. So when you imagine things and you imagine things too much, some things can become reality. Some things can actually become reality because thought can take form. Everything that we see here came from a thought. Everybody can agree. Everything we see in what we're exposed to and what we view through what we call our eyes is based off thought. All right, it was here before we got here. We're trying to find out how did it get here, or what put us here, and the thought process that was created by somebody else. Because everything that concerns memory of where you originated is not what's supposed to be presented today. I'm going to prove it. All right, so we understand image, we understand mental uploading, we understand image, we know image, we know mental uploading, and mental uploading and images is based on everything that we see. And everything we see is based on what somebody told us. All right. Everything we see or hear is based off what we told us, no matter what field of understanding that you're dealing with. All right. So as representative of the English Theological Church and those who are representing Christ Church, i.e. Christ's bride, had better belong to the origin and history or concerning this image or this term or this metaphor concerning this person called Christ. And whether he was an abstract being or was he a concrete being, some physical being who actually walked this earth. All right. Symbolizing that image representation going back to what we call time immemorial. Time immemorial. Okay. We call that 0 point reference or 0 point energy. So we know Athlon is a name given to those who descended from the noble family. All right. Those who descended down from the noble family, and only those who descend down from the noble family only have a right to be eligible for the kingship or belonging to that family of kingship. The term is an Old English, hence Old English and Old Saxon compound, meaning noble family, and ing meaning belonging to. And it was usually rendered to Latin as Phyllis, which means king's son, or the Anglo-Saxon neologism clito. All right, so everybody who's watching this video, please look those terms up. Let's move on. Let's start here. Let's start from the source. Let's start from the source. All right, because right now we don't understand our state here on this plane of day man manifested as well as what we're made of. All right, we're made of energy and matter. Right, but energy and matter is not the same as far as how we understand it. All right, so we just go back to the source of our understanding. We know ing means belonging to. All right. Ether is almost similar to ethyl, because we know there's a gas called ethylene. Ethyl. All right. Ethylene oxide. Right. That's a term that also falls under what we falls under the classical elements. All right. So you got ether, and ethyl, which falls under classical elements. Look that up. But we're concerned about ether, because we know that the ethyl, which is a gas, are confined to the terrestrial sphere as what we call planet Earth. Planet Earth. And planet Earth is subject to what we call the sublunary things that which govern the terrestrial sphere. And that deals with the moon, because everything on this planet is subject to the gravitational pull of the moon. All right. And everything in the universe is subject to the gravitational pull of what we call the sun. All right. That's called quantum, no, it's called gravity theory of relativity. All right, we're discussing in a second. All right, ether elements. According to ancient medieval science, ether, alternatively spelled including ether, aether, and ether, also known as the fifth element or quintessence, is the material that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. So terrestrial sphere is just this Earth, everything under subluminary. Once again, the terrestrial sphere is everything that's subluminary, except to the subluminary sphere, which is the moon. All right. The concept of ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity, i.e., light and gravity. We know matter is subject to gravity. Light is subject to gravity as well, all right, which is discussed because we know that anything that falls into the black hole, even light itself, is subject to the gravitational pull of that dark hole, i.e., that black hole, i.e., space and time. That's called a wormhole. We'll discuss in a second. The concept ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity. In the late 19th century, physicists postulated that ether permeated space. You hear that? That ether permeated space. All right, because Einstein dealt with the special relativity theory and general relativity theory. He had two theories: one gravity governing gravity, and one governing matter and energy. All right, so check it out. It says that the concept of ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity. And in the late 19th century, physics postulated that ether permeated space, providing a medium, a transmission medium, ability to be able to transfer signals and waves. And we know signals and waves are information. Signals and waves are information that received it. In order for the information to be transferred, there must be a transmission medium. And that medium is subject to the vacuum. All right? And vacuum means exempt from space, void of space, meaning no matter. No matter. But evidence for the presence of such medium was not found in Michelson's Morley experiment, and this result has been interpreted to mean that no luminisferous ether exists. So far as they understand it, based off their theory, that there's no such thing as luminisferous ether. All right, and they don't know, and we don't know why, because we forgot that there was such a thing as luminiferous ether. Okay. That's what we are. We are the fifth element. And in order for the fifth element to exist, we must move into a fourth dimensional dimension that's absent of space and time. Because absent of space and time, meaning there is no matter. 0 point energy. E equals mc square. Notice the word square. All right. So the abstract story that we understand about ether, all right, still refers to us, all right? The word means pure, fresh air or clear sky. He breathed life into you. We breathe in air and breathe out carbon dioxide. So there is an element that gives vitality to us here on this plane. But that's not it, because air is confined to the terrestrial sphere along with the other three: air, water, fire, and earth. Air, water, fire, and earth. 4 elements. Ether is the fifth element, but it can only be understood by you moving to a fifth dimension. Understanding the fifth element, which can only exist in the fourth dimension, because it says it was thought to be pure essence that the goddess breathed, filling the space where they live, analog to the air breathed by mortals. All right, we breathe air, right? Air occupies space because it's a gas. But before that space was there, before that energy put there, we existed. Because the gods breathe air into mortals. So a mortal is not an immortal. In order to be an immortal, you must remember your existence as an immortal. Here on this plane, things may manifest it. Ether is related to means to incinerate, and intrinsic to burn or to shine, meaning people with burnt black facades. That's talking about you. You are the ether beings, right? But you're subject to the state of existence as breathed by mortals, and you were taught that this was your only existence as a mortal. Why? Because they didn't want you to know that you were the fifth element. You were the missing piece of the puzzle. You are an Ethereum and abstract, and I'm going to prove it in concrete. Because let's go into theories as those who study us, and they're still studying us today. All right? They're still studying us today. Ether theories concerning the fifth element, and the fifth element is known as luminiferous ether. As they concerned, it don't exist. Why? Because they can't verify it. To them, it's just a theory. Hold that thought. Everybody research what you got so far. Okay, I'm back. Like I said, the reason why we go on this because people who created these theories apparently did not originate from this science that they're trying to get knowledge of. You know what I'm saying? Or else this is part of who they are. If it was part of who they are, how could they forget? And they're not trying to learn about this in reference to who they are because they know it's us. Because I just dealt with it from mysticism or mythology in respect to the element ether, and it makes reference to us or who are classified as Ethiopians or Egyptians or Black people or Native Africans, whatever the term you want to use, or whatever metaphor, it still goes back to the origin of the originator of that story, which is ether. All right, ether. Let me see this. In physics, because we are physical, soon to be physical beings. So if you are a physical being, then you must understand physics. All right. You can either come to my school or you can go to Albert Einstein. Ooh, he ain't living no more. So you can go to one of these colleges and they can make it confusing as hell. Confused as they'll make it so confusing that you'll drop out and pay all that money for nothing. All right. In physics, ether theory, also known as Aether theory, proposed the existence of a medium of space-filling substance as a field of transmission as a field substance or a field as a transmission medium for the propagation of electromagnetic or gravitational forces. Once again, in physics, ether theories propose the existence of a medium, a space-filling substance or field as a transmission medium for the propagation of electromagnetic or gravitational forces. All right. We see that. We know that that has a reference to what we call light. That has a lot to do with light because that's what we perceive through light information because we know light is a transmission medium. Light is a transmission medium. It's a vehicle to transfer information for you to be informed. It says, since the development of special relativity, i.e. E equals mc squared or energy and matter equivalence, theories using a substantial ether fell out of the use in modern physics and are now replaced by more abstract models. It fell out of use in modern physics. Why did this fall out of use? Because the origin goes back to what? The Middle Ages. That's where the origin of the study goes back to, the Middle Ages, but now it's stopped in the modern physics. Why? Y'all need to ask yourself that. The early modern ether has little in common with ether. Did you hear that? The early modern ether has little in common with the ether of classical elements, which pertains to us, from which the name was borrowed. The assorted theories embody the various conceptions of this medium and substance. All right. We know what a transmission medium is, right? A transmission is a system of substance that can mediate to propagation of signals for the purpose of telecommunication. So they're speaking to you, y'all. Everyone, our ancestors are speaking to us. But you got to be listening. You have to be listening. A transmission medium is a result for telecommunication, i.e. a telephone. Here in the Anglophone, governed in the Anglosphere. All right. Let's see what these early theologians on ether say. Zero-point energy. Ether theories come from understanding zero-point energy. So this is 0-point energy. Everybody see that? Aristotle, as well as what's his name? Isaac Newton, as well as Albert Einstein, all had their theories on what it is that we're talking about today. All right. 0-point energy evolved from historical ideas about vacuum. All right. Vacuum means void of space. That's what it means. Void of matter. Without matter, which we see now, without that, you would still exist because you will be all mind. You wouldn't be the brain. You wouldn't be all the faculties that are composed of, which is brain is one of them, sight, taste, touch, smell, etc. Those are all faculties for this spacesuit to work, but you don't need it. You don't need it if you remember who you are, because the transition is going to come where you're not going to need it. You're going to morphosize. You're going to morphosize. All right, you're moving towards transformation. We are moving toward a transition in our state of existence. All right, even though you're standing still, you're still moving because the planet is moving. So if the planet is moving, that means you moving with the planet, and you're subject to the laws as the planet is subject to the laws that govern it. All right, and the planet is made of matter. But the origin of that matter comes from somewhere else. So you have to go back to 0-point energy and the theories that govern 0-point energy based off their theory of where it really came from, and that's you. You exist in that 0-point energy space, i.e. antimatter. 0-point energy evolved from historical ideas about the vacuum. To Aristotle, the vacuum was to empty, i.e. space independent of body. Space independent of body. He believed this concept violated basic physical principles and asserted that the elements of earth, fire, air, and water were not made of atoms, but were continuous. So they need to understand the origin of the continuous of the elements that were subject to the terrestrial sphere, such as the four that were mentioned here: fire, air, earth, water. Because there's another one, the fifth element, that they say was non-existent. Why? Because they cannot prove it. Late in the 19th century, however, it became apparent that the evacuated region still contained thermal radiation, something still there. The existence of ether as a substitute for a true void was the most prevalent theory of the time. That's the only thing they can come up with. According to the successful electromagnetic ether theory upon Maxwell electrodynamics, this all-encompassing ether was endowed with energy and hence very different from nothingness. The fact that the electromagnetic and gravitational phenomenon was early transmitted in empty space indicated that the associated ethers were a part of the fabric of space itself. A part of the fabric of space itself. So that space was nothing more than what they call a fabric sheet of what they call fluid for the planets to swim in. The planets swim in the swimming pool of ether, electromagnetic energy. Ether. What is the true name of this ether? Let's find out. Now, when we're dealing with the 0-point energy, which doesn't involve earth, fire, water, and air, you're dealing with what we call special relativity theory. All right, special relativity theory. What it's called energy special relativity theory, which means E equals mc squared constant speed of light. All right, energy is equal to matter constant to the speed of light. All right, so in order to understand that, you must understand mass energy equivalence, which is right here. Physics, y'all. I learned this by myself in 2 days. In physics, mass energy equivalence is a relationship between mass and energy. We already discussed 0-point energy, right? That's the result in a vacuum. Space empty of body, i.e. matter, all right? Which you are composed of. You fill the space of that matter which you're composed of now. You still exist, but not as matter, because matter is void. And matter is void when it's subject to what we call vacuum. You can only go back to the vacuum, which is fourth dimensional, by having the information needed to go back to that transition where the vacuum can take place. And that's light. And we know light is a transmission medium. Ability for you to be able to telecommunicate. Hey, beam me up. Because we know light is a beam, i.e. light beam. And we know beams is energy. In physics, mass energy equivalent is the relationship between mass and energy in a system of rest frame. So even though you're sitting right here, you're still energy. Where the two quantities differ only by a multiplicated constant and unit of measurement. The principle is described by the physicist Albert Einstein in formula energy equals mc squared, and a reference frame where the system is moving, it's relativistic energy and relativistic mass instead of rest mass. Obey the same formula. The formula defines the energy E of the particle in its rest frame as a product of mass, i.e. with the speed of light squared constant twice. Because the speed of light is large numbers of everyday units, approximately 300,000 kilometers or 186,000 miles. What's it? 300,000 kilometers or 186,000 miles. The formula implies that a small amount of rest mass measured with the system is at rest corresponds to an enormous amount of energy which is independent of composition of matter. This is called quantum fluctuation. This is called quantum fluctuation. Okay. First sentence says it all. In quantum physics, in quantum physics, a quantum fluctuation, also known as a vacuum state fluctuation or vacuum fluctuation, is the temporary random change in the amount of energy at any point in space. You hear that? It's the amount of change in energy at any point in space. That's 0-point energy. 0-point energy is a result of quantum fluctuation known in quantum physics. All right? That's called space and time. Space and time is a distance upon distance. All right? That's geometry, measurement. All right. Let's go here. Luminiferous ether. Still talking about ether. Luminiferous ether or ether. Luminiferous meaning light bearing. So if somebody ain't bringing you this information, then they ain't bringing you no light. They bring you into darkness. All right. If you can't understand this information about light, then you are in darkness. Intentionally, willingly, or ignorantly. One of the three. All right. Luminiferous meaning light bearing was the postulation medium for the propagation of light, i.e., transmission medium for the propagation of light. It was invoked to explain the ability of apparently wave-based light to propagate through empty space, i.e., a vacuum, through zero-point energy. Sometimes the wave should not be able, something that a wave should not be able to do. There's something of spatial plenum, space completely filled with matter, of a luminiferous ether rather than a spatial vacuum, provides a theoretical medium that will be required by wave theories of light. All right. Those who pull it up, you need to read that again to get a better understanding about it. Let's jump here. Okay. See it? Still talking about luminiferous ether. As I stated previously, by this point, the mechanical qualities of ether had become more and more magical. All right. It had to be a fluid in order to fill space, but one that was millions times more rigid than steel in order to support the high frequencies of light waves. It also had to be massless, i.e., void of matter, and without viscosity. Otherwise, it would visibly affect the orbits of the planet. Additionally, it appeared it had to be completely transparent, non-dispersive, and comprehensible, and continues at a very small scale. All right, so ether is invisible and infinite. Ether, once again, is invisible and infinite, meaning you can't see it, and it cannot come in contact with matter. It cannot come in contact with matter. Ether was invented for the planets to swim in, to constitute electric atmospheres and magnetic effluvia, to convey sensations from one part of our bodies. You notice they talk about universality that are switching to our bodies. You see that? Ether was invented for the planets to swim in, to constitute electro atmosphere and magnetic effluvia, to convey sensations from one part of our bodies to another, and so on until all space had been filled 3 or 4 times over with ether, i.e. manifold. The only ether which has survived is that which was invented by Huygens to explain the propagation of light. All right. So we know ether is known as the luminiferous ether, and this is what the planets swim in. And we know that within that ether, there's information, i.e. light. So there must be a light bearer that's able to bring that information through that medium by way of the vacuum. All right, we know the vacuum is what we call dark matter. Fifth element. All right, fifth element means the collapse in that space and time, i.e. dark matter, as a result of what we call general special relativity. Let's look at that real quick. Bear with me. Sorry about that. I don't know what that was all about. All right. Everybody pull it up. General relativity. Not special relativity theories, but general relativity theories. All right. This talks about space and time, wormholes, curvature. Because we know, as I said, ELF waves have the ability to travel on the curvature of space and time. All right. Check it out. We all come from ether, but do we have that understanding? That's only in 417. We were changed in the twinkling of an eye to be caught up. Blessed those for taking the first resurrection, for which the second resurrection has no sting. There's going to be a first death and a second death. Blessed those who were taking the first death, because you're going to have to give off this matter. You're going to have to burn. You're going to have to shine. You're going to have to. You want to be seen as you truly are? Then the only way you can be seen as you truly are if somebody clean you off. And the only way to clean you off is to learn how to clean yourself. To learn how to clean yourself is to properly be taught. If you're not taught, then no matter if you want to change or not, you can't change because you still remain dirty. General relativity. All right, everybody see this around this dark matter? As you can see this field, this is called ether. All right, this is ether. All right, electromagnetic energy. All right, electromagnetic energy. And we know that Earth is three-dimensional. All right, it's transitioning. Everything in Earth, everything of the Earth that's a matter is transitioning. It has an unfolding stage, or arbitrary clock. All right, as a result of the, as we said, space and time is subject to the curvature because we know that everything in space that exists in space, such as the planets, are subject to gravitational pull that when they come in contact with each other. All right, as a result of their makeup. All right, that electromagnetism, the electromagnetism ability to attract and repel. All right, we know distance limits the gravitational pull based off the distance. Because we know that the moon revolves around the Earth at a distance. We know the Earth revolves around the sun at a distance, but it don't get caught in the gravitational pull. Why? Someone put it that way. Something put it that way. Let's find out. All right. General relativity, also known as the general relativity theory of Einstein's theory of gravity, is a geometric theory, i.e. the measurement of gravitational published by Albert Einstein in 1915. All right. It is the current description of the gravitational modern physics. All right. So modern physics was adopted from medieval physics because they knew this in the Middle Ages. All right. Since we're discussing ether. All right, general relativity generalizes special relativity and refines Newton's laws of universal gravitation, providing a unified description of gravity as a geometric property of space and time, i.e. a wormhole, or a fourth dimensional space-time. Because we know in order for the space and time is based upon distance. In particular, the curvature of space-time and directly related to energy, momentum to whatever matter and radiation at present, i.e. U. All right, because we know electromagnetic wave, i.e. Light waves, i.e. L waves or light waves, which are electromagnetic waves, and we know electromagnetic waves travel to what we call light. We know light is energy that's subject to what we call a transmission medium, and it goes by way of what we call a vacuum. We know space and time, and to move from one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, into fourth-dimensional, you must have that fifth element. All right? How I know it? Let's watch a quick video on it. This is quantum fluctuation. That's the wormhole, space-time collapsing from three-dimensional to fourth-dimensional. Everybody see it. All right. So once again, general relativity theory created by Albert Einstein, along with special relativity theory created also by Albert Einstein. He says general relativity generalizes special relativity and refines Newton's law of gravitation, providing a unification description of gravity as a geometric property of space and time, or a fourth dimensional space-time. All right. It's particular that the curvature of space-time is directed, related to energy, momentum of whatever matter are radiated at that present. Let's go back to alpha waves. Electromagnetism, which is energy, and energy is light, i.e. light bearer, luminiferous ether, light bearing ether. All right. Propagation. Due to the extreme low wavelength, L waves can diffract around large objects. It didn't say absorb. It didn't say emit. It didn't say that. It said diffract around large obstacles are not blocked by mountain ranges or the horizon. It can travel around the curvature of the Earth. I repeat, the curvature of the Earth. Why? Because light travels the least path resistance. Light travels at the shortest path it can take. All right. Curvature of the Earth. As you can see, spherical Earth, the Earth's curvature refers to the approximation of figures of the Earth as a sphere. You can only start that from 0 point, which is called by 0 point in geometry. And that means the radius. All right. The distance from the outer to the central point is called the radius. All right. The distance within the circumference of that sphere is what we call distance. All right, let's go, let's move back. All right. So it says electromagnetic waves can travel on the curvature of the Earth, and the curvature of the Earth dealing with electromagnetic waves can only travel to what we call light. All right, so let's get an understanding about what light is. We just discussed luminiferous ether, and it said luminiferous ether is what the planets swim in. All right. It is also said this luminiferous ether also means light bearing. Everybody should be pulling this up. I'm telling you. Luminiferous ether or ether, luminiferous meaning light bearing, was the postulated medium for the propagation of light. It was invoked to explain the ability of apparently wave-based light to propagate through empty space, i.e. a vacuum, something that waves should not be able to do. They saying that it shouldn't be able to do because we shouldn't be able to be using this telecommunication. Right? They're using phones. We don't have to use phones. We have the ability to telecommunicate back home by picking up that signal. All right? You must have that signal. All right, so let's talk about light. All right. Light or visible light is electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation is also called ether. Which element down here? Let me show you. Bear with me, y'all. Act up. Bear with me. Okay, what we're gonna do, we're gonna close out on this one. I'm gonna come back for part two. All right, I'm gonna close out on this one. I'll go over part two and pick off where I left off. All right.